by ASHRAF Khalil, Kevin Freking and Michael Balsamowashington, shouting, "Black Lives Matter" and "I Can't Breathe." Hundreds of people converged on the White House for a second straight day Saturday to protest the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis and President Donald Trump's response. In several instances, pepper spray was used to disperse the crowd as pockets of violence erupted. Trump did not talk to reporters as he returned to the White House after watching the launch of a SpaceX rocket in Florida. It was not clear if he could hear the protest over the sounds of his helicopter. Earlier Saturday, Trump belittled protesters. In Florida, he pledged to stop mob violence. "I stand before you as a friend and ally to every American seeking justice and peace, and I stand before you in firm opposition to anyone exploiting this tragedy to loot, rob, attack and menace," the president said after watching the launch of a SpaceX rocket. "Healing, not hatred, justice, not chaos, are the missions at hand." Protesters in Washington chanted and taunted the police. Witnesses said there were multiple incidents of protesters pushing against barricades and being repelled with pepper spray. "We're sick of it. The cops are out of control," protester Olga Hall said. "They're wild. There's just been too many dead boys," she said. The Washington protest was one of several around the country following Floyd's death. During one confrontation, protesters took down a barrier and one person threw an electric scooter at the police. An activist wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt put himself between police and the protesters and yelled, "Stop. This is what they want." Speaking over a megaphone earlier in the evening, McCall said, "We don't need violence. All we need are our voices." While some protesters stayed near the White House, others marched through the streets chanting, "No justice and no peace." And "Say his name, George Floyd." The mood was angry and several speakers implored marchers to remain peaceful. At multiple stops along the march, protesters verbally abused lines of uniformed police officers with riot shields. The march paused between the Washington Monument and the African American Museum, and demonstrators sat down in the street for a moment of silence for each minute that the Minneapolis police officer knelt on Floyd's neck. Floyd, who is black, was being held in handcuffs when he died Monday in Minneapolis after a police officer pressed his knee into his neck for more than 8 minutes even after Floyd stopped moving and pleading for air. Protests have erupted in U.S. cities in the days since. At the Lincoln Memorial, one organizer spoke over a megaphone, "Look to the left and to the right and thank that person. We can't hug anybody because of COVID, but I love you anyway." Many of the protesters wore masks, but did not socially distance themselves.